ito yung dating presidente na tatay niya. Yung pinatayo niya nung presidente pa siya. Naudlot eh. Naudlot po yan. Yung dating, yung pong Bataan Nuclear Plant. Naudlot ang operasyon ng planta nang patalsikin po yan sa poder. Na itong Marcos at maupong presidente ng bansa, kung natatandaan nyo, ito si Tita Cory. Binabalik lang natin ang kasaysayan. Noong 1986, naudlot yan. Meron na tayong Bataan Nuclear Plant eh. Dapat eh. Safety issue po ang naging dahilan, senyora. Safetyness. Yung safety natin. Siguradong ang prospect ng pagbubukas ng nuclear plant ay magiging dahilan ng kilos protesta na naman yan ng maraming mga sektor, lalo na po yung mga environmentalist natin. Pero sa ngayon, sabi ho ng Department of Energy, lahat ng mga bagay na yan na nakikita nila noon ng mga environmentalists, isinaalang-alang na nila. At sinasabing may kakambal na, siyempre, laging sinasabi nila na yung plantang nuclear ay merong kakambal na panganib. Pero sa totoo lang, ang nuclear plant na ginagamit ng maraming maunlad na bansa, isipin nyo maunlad na bansa ang gumagamit yan Pero tayo, in developing countries tayo, dapat sana meron na tayo nito at kasabay na natin sana yung maunlad na bansa like Japan, Hong Kong, lahat yan. Lahat ng Korea. Isipin nyo, tabi-tabi lang natin yan. May nuclear plant sila. Na mga epektibong pinagmumulan po ng murang electricity nila. Kaya mura ang electricity nila eh. Ang Amerika, nakita nyo, napakamura ng electricity nila. Pero ang Pilipinas, por 10%, napakamahal ng ating elektrisidad. Pero ang tanong, sulit ba na mapababa ang halaga ng enerhiya kapalit ng nakaambang panganib tulad po ng naganap sa Japan at sa Russia noon? Kasi may naganap na gano'n eh. Pero ang sabi nila, mukhang napagtantunan nila kung paano ma-overcome yung mga aksidente o yung maaaring posibilidad na panganib dito po sa pagtatayo ng tinatawag na nuclear plant sa Islas de Pilipinas. Ang tanong dyan, yung campaign promise po ni Marcos, ni BBM-elect President, ibaba ang presyo ng bilihin, lalo na ang bigas, at inaasahan natin na palagay po natin lahat tayo ngayon ay hindi na tayo gagamit ng tradisyon na krudong langis. Sa halip, nuclear power ay tiyak na matatamo yung tinatawag na pagbaba ng lahat ng mga bilihin kapag ito ay natupad. Yan po ang aabangan natin. Marami tayong aabangan sa loob ng 6 na taon na panunungkulan ng bagong halal na presidente, walang iba kundi si President-elect BBM. With that, si Senyor Pacheco, minsan pa nagsasabing, marami po salamat sa inyong pagsubaybay sa amin sa Teka Teka. Si Senyor Pacheco minsan pa nagsasabing, don't worry, be happy. Hanggang bukas. Adios.
Suelo, balance,
Standard Time, kinabdang alas 6 ng gabi.
el RPND Triplex, Radio Ronda Zamboanga.
This is Radio Philippines Network, D-Triple-X Zamboanga, D-Triple-X Zamboanga. This is Radio Philippines Network, the power, the first, the leader. This is Radio Philippines Network, D-Triple-X Zamboanga, D-Triple-X Zamboanga.
At the helm of his economic measures?
Well, first, the country's recovery from the economic crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic is the main priority of the incoming Marcos administration. That's why many would like to know the composition of his economic team, since it can dictate the future of millions of Filipinos. They have to respond to rising prices of basic goods, oil, and on how the government can pay its ballooning debts.
Bangko Sentral Governor Ben Jocno may not be able to finish his term, supposedly to expire July next year. Jocno has already accepted the offer of President-elect Bongbong Marcos to be the next Finance Secretary. He will be replaced by Monetary Board member and former Socio-Economic Planning Chief Felipe Medalla. They will have to solve some pressing challenges affecting the lives of many Filipinos. The next economic managers will have to decide on whether or not they can reduce income taxes mandated under the train law, as well as deal with the Finance Department's proposal of increasing taxes in many products and services so the government will have more money. Marcos, however, admits he has no decision yet as they're still studying the proposals.
Yung mga pabigla-bigla na tinataas, binababa, hindi natin magagawa yun dahil kung gawin natin yan, it will, if there are too many moving parts, you cannot anticipate what will happen.
He is also still studying if government can afford to suspend the oil excise tax amid the rising petroleum prices in the global market.
First of all, we cannot control prices. Hindi tayo price giver, price taker tayo sa oil market.
Aside from Jokno and Medalla, BBM also nominates Fred Pascual as the next Trade and Industry Secretary. Pascual is the former president of the University of the Philippines and now president of the Management Association of the Philippines. Marcos also designates SMC Tollways President and CEO Manny Bonoan to be his Public Works and Highways Secretary. Bonoan once served as DPWH Undersecretary during the time of Presidents Erap Estrada and Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. He is expected to continue President Duterte's Build infrastructure program. As he continues to complete his economic team, he believes they are on a good start, despite worries of some investors and analysts about the future state of the economy under the Marcos administration.
On his campaign promise of lowering the price of rice to 20 pesos per kilo, he clarifies that it's an aspiration and they have to do many reforms which will take several years. He also did not say if that will happen under his administration. Back to you, Pia.
Rex Remigio there reporting. But Rex, before I let you go, what about the other positions in other government agencies? Does President-elect Marcos have any nominees so far?
He designated his close friend and former Davao del Norte Congressman Anton Lagdameo as the special assistant to the president. We can recall that President Duterte created the position for his longtime aide and now Senator Bongo. But for other agencies like the Bureau of Customs and Internal Revenue, he says they're still in the process of looking for potential nominees. Pia.
Rex Remigio there reporting. Business groups are optimistic about the policies of President-elect Bongbong Marcos's economic team. The influential Makati Business Club, or MBC, says the appointments, quote, should boost the confidence of local and foreign businesses that the new administration will promote liberalizing but inclusive policies that will accelerate job creation, competition, and economic recovery, unquote. The British Chamber of Commerce also expects the economy to further open up and for the incoming administration to ratify a regional trade agreement while continuing to spend on public infrastructure.
We expect to see continuity. We expect to see further economic liberalisation. And also, I'd just like to say we'd like to see pass now actually ratification of the RCEP, which is the trade agreement. And going forward, we see further investment in the economy, the infrastructure.
The chamber went on to say that it looks forward to working with the new administration. Well, aside from his economic managers, Marcos brings up the government's war on drugs. Speaking to select members of the media, he got to discuss the matter. Well, he says he got to discuss the matter with President Rodrigo Duterte. Marcos reveals they met several times, even before the elections. He also says Mr. Duterte can join his administration as a drug czar if he wants to, although they have not talked about it.
One thing that he was very assertive about was that ituloy mo yung anti-drug syndicate na sinimulan ko. Do it your own way. He really said that. Do it your own way. Palitan mo, gawin mo yung gusto, pero wag mong iiwanan yan dahil kawawa ang kabataan natin. Talagang nasisira ang mga buhay nila.
Mr. Duterte's drug war has killed around 6,000 alleged drug offenders based on government records, but human rights groups say the number is much higher. A historic proclamation with another Marcos and another Duterte holding the top two posts in government, Bongbong Marcos as president-elect more than 3 decades after his father's regime was toppled by a peaceful revolt, and Sara Duterte as vice president-elect just as her father is about to end his term as chief executive. With the country still suffering from the impact of the pandemic, along with high consumer prices and rising government debt, Amor Santos tells us Marcos has an appeal to the Filipino people.
I ask you all, pray for me, wish me well. I want to do well because when a president does well, the country does well. And I want to do well for this country.
This is what Bongbong Marcos said shortly after being proclaimed president-elect. He says he's humbled by the trust and confidence given to him by the people. He also commits to do his best.
To have received over 31 million votes from our countrymen is as valuable a expression of trust as can be had by anyone in public life. And so for that, I thank our people. And beyond that, I promise you that we may not be perfect, but we will always strive to perfection. Thank you very much.
Marcos congratulated the Commission on Elections, poll workers, and the National Board of Canvassers for a job well done.
In my experience, the best run election that we have seen, and that it has reflected truly the voice of the people and the choice of the people.
In 2016, Marcos filed an election protest against Vice President Leni Robredo. After 5 years of fighting, the Supreme Court unanimously junked the case. In the race to Malacanang, the Marcos camp rallied for unity and continues to do so.
He's offering is his unifying brand of leadership. He is now the president-elect. He's been proclaimed by the joint houses of Congress, and he will be president of all Filipinos. He will be president of every Filipino.
Unsurprisingly, the winner's camp is still plagued by controversies involving the Marcos family. Marcos spokesperson shot down a question about next year's commemoration of the People Power Revolution, which ousted dictator Ferdinand Marcos. Vice President-elect Sara Duterte, for her part, dedicated her victory to the victims of terrorism, abuse, criminality, and bullying. Her message to public servants and Filipinos.
The Commission on Elections, our teachers, police, and soldiers, and the honorable members of Congress in joint session, thank you for a generally peaceful and orderly election. Magtulungan tayo para sa isang bayan na mapayapa at nagkakaisa. Mahal natin ang Pilipinas.
Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
So what do the Marcoses think about their return to Malacanang? For Senator Amy Marcos, her brother's victory is a second chance and a restoration of faith and confidence in their family.
Kung tutuusin, hindi masyadong mahalaga yung pagbabalik sa palasyo. What's most important to us is, of course, our name, the family name that has become so controversial and so difficult at times to bear. The legacy of my father is what we hope will be clarified at last.
Amy Marcos also says their mother Imelda seemingly stopped showing signs of aging upon hearing that her only son won.
Well, siyempre, yung nanay ko sobrang excited. Sobrang excited niya at tuwan-tuwa siya sa mga pangyayari. She's suddenly able to hear, to walk, lahat ng sakit-sakit nung panahon ng COVID, lahat ng nararamdaman, biglang nawala, maliksing maliksi, at parang hindi na siya ulit 92, kundi 29.
Despite a graft conviction in 2018, the Sandigan Bayan allowed Imelda to post bail of 300,000 pesos, partly because of her age and state of health. She was 89 years old then. Imelda was sentenced to serve 6 to 11 years in prison for illegally funneling at least $352 million to Swiss foundations when she was governor of Metro Manila in the 1970s. Coming up, the last batch of winners for the May 9 elections have been proclaimed. 55 party list groups will form part of the 19th Congress, which opens in 2 months. Plus, more tourists who went diving at the Tubataha Reef in Palawan test positive for COVID-19. The details right here on Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. This is Newsnight on CNN. Philippines Congress has proclaimed the winning... COMELEC, the Commission on Elections, has proclaimed the winning party lists for the incoming 19th Congress. Joining us for more details is Melissa Lopez, reporting live from the Philippine International Convention Center in Pasay. Mel?
The 55 party lists will officially form part of the 19th Congress, which opens in July. The PICC was filled to capacity as 2 officials per party list sat up in front for the ceremony, went up to the stage to accept their certificates of proclamation and posed for the traditional hand-raising gesture. 63 seats were up for grabs for 177 contenders. COMELEC went ahead with today's event but only proclaimed the winners for 62 seats. The list is on your screen. That's because the group United Senior Citizens, ranked 37, was excluded as its registration as a party list was denied. The case is still on appeal before the COMELEC and Bank. However, longtime party lists Kabataan and Gabriela have been proclaimed with 1 seat each, despite a request from the government's NTF-LCAC to cancel their registration. Who will be part of the next Congress? 15 of the 55 party lists are first-timers. The rest have representatives serving as lawmakers since 2019. Meanwhile, some of the long-serving party lists in previous Congresses did not make it, like Buhay and Bayan Muna. Some party lists are represented by the likes of religious leader Brother Eddie Villanueva for Sivac, TV host Carla Estrada for Tingog, Senator Bong Revilla's son Brian for Agimat, and Senator-elect Rafi Tulfo's wife Jocelyn for ACT-CIS. Others led by showbiz icons did not make it. But here is COMELEC's explanation.
Whether they belong to the sector that they represent or they are advocate of the sector that they represent.
There were some awkward moments as the Magsasaka and Senior Citizens Party List had warring factions with 2 sets of nominees present today. COMELEC decided not to hand over the certificate nor raise any hands pending resolution. P3 PWD of former COMELEC Commissioner Rowena Guanzon did not send any representatives, leaving the stage empty. Anti-crime group ACT-CIS stopped the race and got 3 seats, while those in the 2nd to 6th spots got 2 each. Transport Group 1 Rider, Visayan Region Party List Tingog, Pro-Livelihood Group for Peace, Ako Bicol, and Sagip. The rest of the party list groups will field one representative each in the next Congress to help pass laws, craft the national budget, and maintain checks and balances for the Marcos Duterte administration. Back to you, Pia.
Melissa Lopez there reporting from the PICC Forum tent in Pasay. Activist groups condemning the police for supposed violence on protesters during the proclamation of President-elect Marcos on Wednesday. They warn the incident could just be a preview of how another Marcos administration will look like. George Cahilas reports.
The peaceful mass action at the Commission on Human Rights compound turned violent on Wednesday when authorities stopped the demonstrators from marching to the Batasang Pambansa, where the proclamation of winning presidential and vice presidential candidates took place. Protesters want the family of President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to be held liable for corruption and human rights violations during the martial law, and for the government to look into the supposed irregularities during the May 9 elections. Police officers in full battle gear clashed with the activists as water cannon was used to disperse them. 14 protesters were hurt during the commotion.
Hindi natin talaga inaasahan itong overkill reaction ng police. Sa tingin natin, uncalled for, unnecessary, na nag-inconvenience sa maraming motorista, commuters, tapos gumamit pa ng dahas.
The police meanwhile explains their action was part of the plan to ensure a peaceful and orderly conduct of the proclamation of the country's next leaders. They insist they exercised maximum tolerance. Protesters, however, argue that if maximum tolerance meant using water cannon and hitting people with sticks, then people just got a peek of what the new norm will be under the Marcos administration.
Ito pa ay pasilip dun sa mangyayari in the next 6 years. Yung paranoid reaction ng police, yung intolerance sa dissent.
The groups are set to discuss with the Commission on Human Rights the appropriate actions to be taken in connection with the violent dispersal on Wednesday, as they prepare for bigger protests in the coming days, leading to the inauguration of Marcos on June 30th. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
The Senate unanimously approves a bill creating the Bulacan Airport City Special Economic Zone and Freeport, or the Bulacan Eco Zone. This covers the new Manila International Airport, which will be the country's largest and most sophisticated gateway, and the Aero City, a sprawling complex of industrial, commercial, and government centers. All 21 centers present during Thursday's plenary session voted to pass the measure. EcoZone will be managed and operated as a separate customs territory to ensure a free flow of goods and capital. A Bulacan EcoZone Authority will be established with a corporate life of 50 years. The EcoZone is seen to create job opportunities and help speed up economic recovery. More tourists that went diving at the Tubataha Reef in Palawan have tested positive for COVID-19. Experts are checking the samples of 14 foreign travelers and 2 local crew members for variants of concern. 5 of the tourists, or 5 of them, had mild symptoms after traveling to Puerto Princesa City last May 14th. All 16 individuals are now in isolation.
For now, ang hinihingi sa mga agencies, sa mga travel agencies sa ating tourism sector na is to monitor closely yung mga pumapasok na mga turista, and at the same time, ma-remind sila kung magkaroon man ng symptoms, may report agad. Nag-coordinate na rin sa provincial government kung ano yung magiging protocol sa mga foreign tourists, even local tourists na papasok dito sa Puerto Princesa. Ang recommendation, kung pwede yung mga turista na papasok ng Puerto Princesa, at least may antigen test. Kasi for now, nasa alert level 1 lang ang Puerto. Kaya hindi siya pwedeng i-require.
Last month, 12 cases from the Tubataha Reef tested positive for the Omicron subvariant BA2.12.1. Experts have warned a COVID-19 surge may happen in the coming weeks, which is why officials are doubling efforts to urge people to get boosted. The ceremonial vaccination was held in Mandaluyong City for priority groups today. Overseas headlines: a community in the U.S. state of Texas is mourning the loss of 19 children and 2 adults who were shot and killed at an elementary school in the city of Uvalde. CNN's Chris Nguyen has chilling new details about the young man behind the incident.
A community heartbroken. Residents in Uvalde, Texas, mourning the loss of 19 children and 2 teachers who were tragically shot and killed at Robb Elementary on Tuesday. These are the faces of just some of the lives cut too short. 4th grade teacher Eva Morales, A. Mary Jo Garza, Jose Flores Jr., Uzziah Garcia, and Javier Lopez. All of them only 10 years old.
How do you look at this girl and shoot her? Oh, my baby, how do you shoot my baby?
Chilling new details emerging about the suspected gunman. Police say he shot his grandmother before going to the school and opening fire on a 4th grade class. Officials say he purchased 2 assault-style rifles for his 18th birthday.
What can you tell us about your grandson? Did you ever know he had firearms?
No, I didn't know. If I had known, I would have reported him.
As the community grapples with this horrific tragedy, politicians are demanding action to curb gun violence.
The idea that an 18-year-old can walk into a store and buy weapons of war designed and marketed to kill is, I think, just wrong.
I'm Chris Nguyen reporting.
CNN obtained proof the gunman initially sent a series of messages to a girl he met online about his plans. Coming up on Newsnight, in Susan Ross's funeral earlier, friends and family look back at the star's impact beyond the film industry. Plus, who broke the Eastern Conference Finals tie in Game 5, the Miami Heat or the Boston Celtics? NBA updates after the break. Welcome back. Veteran actress Susan Ross finally laid to rest today. How is she remembered by those who knew her behind the scenes? Our Paulo Barcelon reports.
17 years after her husband passed on, the queen of Philippine movies is reunited with her king. Susan Roses was laid to rest past noon Thursday beside the tomb of Fernando Poe Jr. at the Manila North Cemetery. Her daughter, Senator Grace Poe, family, friends, and fellow actors were there to bid their last farewell. People close to Roses remembered her for 2 things: her kindness and the good times they had with the woman they call Tita Susan.
Alaga ako niyan mula nung bata ako, very thoughtful sa akin, laruan, tsokolate, ganyan, lagi niya alala.
Napakalungkot po, sir. Kasi masyado malapit po ako sa pamilya nila. Naabutan niyo ako ng papel. Nakalagay ko sa papel kung saan ako pupunta ng restaurant. Kasi sabi niya sa akin, Ador, hindi ka na maiba sa pamilya.
May God give her mercy.
Before the funeral, a mass was held at the Heritage Park where the wake was held. Among those who visited last night, President Rodrigo Duterte, who met Senator Poe and her family. Poe and Duterte were once rivals for the presidency 6 years ago, but last night, the chief executive condoled with Senator Poe. Senator Grace earlier thanked the public for their overwhelming support, revealing that one of her late mother's most prized pieces of advice came from a line used in her first political ad in 2013.
So take, ginawa namin yung commercial. So after I said, sabi ni Susan, promise? And I said, promise po. Dinagdagan niya. Wala sa script. Sabi niya, pagbutihan mo. Perfect, di ba? Yan ang palagi niyang sinasabi na banta sa akin.
Her tomb still awaits its grave marker, but a handwritten note is left as the cement dries out for the day. It says JSP, the initials of Rosas' real name, Jesusa Sonora Poe, followed by We Love You, words from her family, friends, and supporters, now that the Queen is finally reunited with her one and only, the King. Paulo Barcelon, CNN Philippines.
Moving on to sports news, Justin Baltazar from the De La Salle Green Archers is suiting up for the Hiroshima Dragonflies in Japan's B-League. The star athlete signed a contract with the Dragonflies for the 2022 to 2023 season. Big man Baltazar initially applied for the PBA rookie draft, but later withdrew his name. Now off to the NBA, the Boston Celtics snatched the Eastern Conference Finals lead at 3-2. The team defeated the Miami Heat in Game 5, 93-80, after an impressive turnaround in the third quarter. Now if the Celtics win Game 6 this Saturday, 8:30 a.m. Philippine time, they head to the finals. In the Western Conference Finals, it's do or die again for the Dallas Mavericks at Game 5 tomorrow, 9 a.m. The Golden State Warriors are a win away from advancing to the finals. After 19 seasons, the Ellen DeGeneres Show says goodbye tomorrow. The final episode is slated for Friday morning Philippine time. Ellen said, as fun as it is, it's just not a challenge anymore. She was the first lead actor in a sitcom to come out as gay back in 1997. A few years later, the Ellen DeGeneres Show was born. There were reports last summer of a toxic work environment, but Ellen now says this is not why she's ending the show, calling her staff her family. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Chronic kidney disease is one of the top 10 leading causes of death here in the Philippines. What often happens is people don't realize that they have the condition until irreversible damage has occurred. Actually, a few lifestyle changes early on can significantly slow down its progression. On the program today, we'll talk about the causes of chronic kidney disease, its symptoms, prevention, as well as its treatment. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Chronic kidney disease happens when our kidneys lose their ability to keep us healthy and filter our blood. Now, our guests are here today to tell us more about this condition. With us is Dr. Emil de la Cruz. He's a nephrologist and chairman of the Department of Medicine from the Medical City. Also with us is Dr. Charles Edward Florendo. He's a family medicine specialist and the chief of clinics of Mary Child's Hospital. Now, our kidneys, as described in all medical books, is a bean-shaped organ located just below our ribcage, sa likod natin. And they play a vital role in our body. Now, I'll start the discussion with Dr. Emil. Pag pinag-usapan natin yung kidneys natin, Dr. Emil, what's its primary job? How does it work to keep us alive and well?
The kidneys, which are paired organs at the back,
are primarily responsible for maintaining a sodium and water balance and, of course, filtering the body of its waste products. So when we have patients who have chronic kidney disease, they lose the ability to filter the waste products in their body, and that's when they start to accumulate creatinine. That's what we measure in the laboratory to measure kidney function.
Another vital role of our kidneys is that it keeps a careful balance of water, salts, as well as minerals in our body, trying to keep everything balanced, kumbaga. Now, Dr. Charles, explain to us why this is necessary for this balance of all these minerals in our body in order to function well.
Our body needs all the minerals and the salts, no, to function properly. There's actually a lot of enzymes, no, and mga processes sa katawan natin na kailangan to. Like for instance, magnesium, 300 types of processes ang kailangan. So kapag hindi pag kulang yung mga minerals na to o kaya yung mga salts, no, or kung sobra, magma-malfunction itong mga functions na to. So may kita mo bigla na lang hirap matulog, kahit na yung ibang mga may psychiatric problem kasi kulang yung mga problem, yung iba nagmamaga yung pa-aparate, ganyan. Kasi hindi yung mga imbalances na mga minerals at saka yung mga salts, hindi maka-function ng tama yung mga cells natin without them.
Dr. Charles, pag-usapan natin a little bit what happens when there is an imbalance. Because when our kidneys start to become damaged, they're unable to perform functions that are necessary for our survival. What happens when our kidneys start to lose their efficiency, when they start to become diseased? At what point do our kidneys considered unhealthy?
Well, unang-una, for most people, they start to have symptoms. Ang pinaka-common symptom dito, yung namamaga yung paa, yung usually dalawang paa. Doon ang pinaka-common na nakikita na nagiging kidney problem. Pero before that, before maging mamamaga ng paa, yung iba nagkakaroon na ng high blood. Yung iba, parating pagod. Yung iba, ihi ng ihe o kaya hindi umiihi. Ganyan, no? So may mga iba-iba mga symptoms na hindi specific. Marami. Pero yung kadalasan yan, napapaisip na lang talaga tayo ng kidney pag namamaga yung mga paa. O kaya, yung other one is pataas yung blood pressure is another possible one. Kaya parati check natin yung blood pressure yung kidneys pag inisip natin blood pressure.
Our viewers get that feeling that our kidneys are very, very vital to our body's function. So it's no surprise that a number of conditions can impair it. Dr. Emil, pag-usapan naman natin nun. Let's talk about some of the causes for kidney disease. Let's talk about some of the causes for acute kidney disease, acute kidney damage, and then let's talk about chronic kidney disease. What makes a person have chronic kidney disease?
Okay, when you say acute kidney disease or acute kidney injury, we talk about a disorder or an impairment in the function of the kidneys that is acute, biglaan. And usually, these cases happen in patients who have severe infections. For example, we usually see them in the ICU. No, yung mga pasyente with sepsis, with severe infections, with heart failure, when, for example, the heart function begins to drop, eventually the kidneys follow. In sepsis, when there is severe infection and there is blood pressure drops, there is a dilatation of all the blood vessels all over the body because of the infection, babagsak ang blood pressure, there will be poor perfusion of blood to the kidneys, and this will lead to acute kidney injury.
Okay, Dr. Emil, pag acute, this is something na biglaan nang mangyayari. So let's talk about itong chronic because this is also very important because ito yung kadalasan hindi napapansin ng mga tao.
That's right. Now, when we speak of chronic kidney disease, this is long-term, no? As the name suggests, chronic, pangmatagalan yan. And usually, they are secondary to, in the Philippines and actually globally, the most common cause of chronic kidney disease is still diabetes, followed by hypertension, and then glomerulonephritis, which is inflammation of the filters of the kidneys. So diabetes and hypertension are the two of the leading causes of chronic kidney disease.
As was mentioned, the two main causes of chronic kidney disease include diabetes and high blood pressure, as well as glomerulonephritis. And both diabetes and hypertension, these are conditions that are extremely prevalent here in our country. Now, pag-usapan natin ang diabetes. Dr. Emil, what does it do to our kidneys and how many people living with it will develop chronic kidney disease?
Patients who are diabetic for at least 10 years will eventually have chronic kidney disease or will start to manifest with chronic kidney disease. However, in my practice, we get patients who have been diabetic for only 5 years but already have some form of insufficiency in the renal function. Now, as to how it leads to chronic kidney disease, in high glucose states, pag mataas ang blood sugar natin, there is a lot of glucose load that we give our kidneys. And that causes what you call hyperfiltration. Masyado namang malakas yung filtration during this period. And over the years, with that load that you give to your kidneys, to the filters, to the glomeruli, changes already begin to happen. Lumalaki yung, first they start to swell, and later on they start to develop scars, no? Sclerosis, fibrosis, tumitigas na yung tissue ng kidneys until they lose their filtering capacity.
Now, earlier on the show, we mentioned that most don't realize that they have chronic kidney disease until it's in its advanced stages. But there are some warning signs that can point to it early on. More on this when we return. We're your partner in healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. Now, chronic kidney disease is an under-recognized public health crisis here in the country, with the condition being a leading cause of death among Filipinos. This occurs when our kidneys are unable to filter the waste and excess fluid in our bodies properly. Now, let's talk about why kidney disease is particularly common here in our country. Dr. Amiel, tell us about some of the reasons why Filipinos are at risk for having chronic kidney disease.
One of the major risk factors among Filipinos, I think, is, well, the prevalence of hypertension and diabetes. No? And then if we dig deeper, I think it can also be traced to our diet. If our diet is rich in sodium, no, high salt, Filipinos are food lovers, di ba? So most of our diet is usually salty, high salt. And then, of course, if we have a poor health-seeking behavior, no, marami sa atin ini-ignore ang pagpapatingin sa doktor. So I think that's the reason primarily why we have an increasing number of chronic kidney diseases.
You mentioned a lot of good reasons there, Filipinos, like malalasang pagkain, high salt, high fat foods. How about the symptoms when it comes to these? Are our kidneys able to adapt to certain changes that may hide certain symptoms and then lalabas na lang before it's too late?
Signs and symptoms of chronic kidney disease come much later. No, we don't really, because you're right. The kidneys have the ability at the start to adapt to these changes in, for example, a high salt diet. However, later on, in the latter stages of chronic kidney disease, and usually that's when they start consulting the doctors, is when they already start to develop signs and symptoms.
What are some of the warning signs that our kidneys are already adapting pero baka hindi ito mapansin ng mga Pilipino?
Well, the most, I think, obvious of the signs and symptoms is edema, no, manas, no. Water, when you find fluid retention in the legs, there's swelling in the legs. I think that's the most obvious manifestation. However, I think more importantly, if we want to pick up chronic kidney disease early, a very simple screening procedure would be getting a urinalysis. The urinalysis will give us a lot of information. It's not a very expensive test to get. I think a urinalysis would be a very good screening test to check if we have signs of chronic kidney disease.
Let's talk about some of the complications that may arise because of chronic kidney disease. We talked about yung pamamaga, pamamanas. What other complications, Dr. Charles, are prevalent with someone with chronic kidney disease?
For one, you have yung kidney failure mismo. Yung kidneys hindi na gumagana. So kung mag-kidney failure ka, delikado talaga yon. You can end up, like yung sinabi ni Dr. Amiel, you can end up with sepsis, you can end up at the ICU. Pero also, because the kidney plays such an important role in the body, people na may kidney disease, we find na madalas silang magkasakit, madali silang magka-pneumonia, madali silang magkaroon ng heart disease, no? Kasi nga, it plays a central role. So, pag nasira yan, ang daming ibang mga sakit na pwedeng sari-sari na pwedeng mangyari sa taong may kidney disease.
Now, Dr. Amiel, a lot of people might misconstrue swollen feet and ankles with that of gout. Can you talk about gout a little bit? Anong connection ito with our kidneys as well?
Well, gout can also lead to chronic kidney disease because when we talk of gout, we talk of uric acid crystals, which can produce some tubular obstruction. No? Bumabara din yan minsan sa ating mga tubules ng ating nephrons. Now, how to differentiate between the two? Well, usually in cases of swelling or manas because of chronic kidney disease, it's usually both feet. And you will see that when you press on it, there is pitting. When you put some pressure, lumulubog talaga yung skin. As compared to swelling because of gout, usually it does not involve both, no, unless the patient has gout on both feet, no. But usually may tenderness, may redness ang gout, no, masakit talaga yung pinaka-joints, no. That's how to distinguish it.
Now, Dr. Amiel, madalas din nakikita ng mga viewers natin if they have any kidney complications is that of anemia. Nagkakaroon ng anemia may chronic kidney disease. It's actually estimated that 1 out of 7 people with kidney disease will have it. Walk us through that. Ano ba yung anemia? Anong connection nito sa ating kidney?
Okay, because the kidneys produce the hormone called erythropoietin, no? Ito yung hormone that our body releases which tells our bone marrow to produce red blood cells. And so when you have impaired kidney function, sira na yung kidneys mo, the cells that should produce this hormone also malfunction and starts to not produce enough erythropoietin in the body, and this leads to anemia of chronic kidney disease.
So it's very important to have yourself checked by a specialist or even a physician or get access to medical care if ever you experience any of these symptoms. Now, treatment for kidney disease usually depends on the cause. But for many cases, small healthy changes in your everyday is the best cure. More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Many people living with diabetes and high blood pressure are at risk of kidney disease. But while the management for this is available, early treatment can make a huge difference in slowing down its progression or even finding a way to minimize it. Dr. Charles, let's talk about early detection for possible chronic kidney disease.
What we do have some laboratory tests. So, kukunin mo lang yung ihi mo and then titignan natin sa microscope and may konting didip lang. This is the simplest way to detect primary problems. And then we have some laboratory tests such as creatinine and BUN. Another thing that I would like to emphasize sa mga ating mga viewers is i-check nyo kung may mga pagbabago sa ihi. Yung dami ng ihi nyo, masakit ba yung pag-ihi? Or nagbabago kulay ng ihi? Or kung bumubula ang ihi ninyo. These are signs na probably baka may problem yung kidneys. And so have yourself check. Kapag ganyan, pag may nakita tayong problem sa urinalysis, we can go on yung kidney test, creatinine, BUN, and we can also do ultrasound para makita natin yung shape ng kidney, kung may bato, mga ganyan.
Now, the sooner you know that you have some form of kidney disease, the better. But even if you don't have this condition, it's worth taking steps to protect your kidneys from damage. Dr. Amiel, let's go through some of the ways that our viewers can manage their kidney health, trying to prevent chronic kidney disease.
The most common causes of chronic kidney diseases are hypertension and diabetes. So make sure if you have those conditions, keep them well managed, no? Control the blood pressure, control the blood sugar. Now, as to other things that we can do in our lifestyle, well, of course, we should avoid smoking. We should not smoke because that will aggravate atherosclerosis in the body. Yung sinasabi natin kanina na pagkipot ng mga ugat. Having a healthy diet, meaning low sodium, low in salt, and low protein, because creatinine is actually a waste product of protein metabolism. So if we are able to limit our intake of protein, that is of course meat, no, pork and beef, and stick to more of vegetables. And well, of course, if you're not diabetic, you can still continue with your carbs. We can slow down the progression of chronic kidney disease.
Dr. Charles, gaano kalaki ba ang impact ng tamang pagkain, tamang diet with regards to our kidneys?
You know, ang diet is something that we do every day, di ba? Ang pagkain. So pag ang pagkain natin ay hindi healthy, malaki talaga yung impact nito. Sabi nga sa inyo, may mga 30 years old pa lang nagkakaroon na ng hypertension. May mga bata pa lang meron ng diabetes. And the diet can help change this. Hydration is very important. I've had a lot of patients na nagbubuhat ng mabigat tapos iihin ng dugo. They need to hydrate. You need to take in proper hydration. And then the other one is they have to avoid taking unnecessary medicines and herbs. Yung mga mahilig mag-take ng kung ano-ano mga iniinom na mga gamot o kaya herbs, some of these herbs and medicines can cause kidney damage also.
There comes a point where our kidneys are just not able to handle all the waste products in our body anymore. Either hindi naagapan or hindi naagapan ang pag-treat nito. So, umaabot tayo sa dialysis as well as transplant ng kidney. Dr. Amiel, that's what I'd like to talk to you about right now. Let's talk about pag umabot na sa puntong dialysis and then kailan umaabot sa puntong kidney transplant.
These two options can both be offered to patients on stage 5 or when kidney transplantation sometimes is even given earlier, is started earlier or is performed earlier. As to the choice, it's actually an option that is available to the patient. Well, kidney transplantation offers a survival advantage. No? When you compare their longevity, well, the life expectancy of patients on kidney transplantation are a little better. But it is also not right to say that patients on dialysis will not survive long because we have patients on dialysis who survive more than 10 to 15 years.
Now, living with chronic kidney disease can be challenging for both patients and the family members. Dr. Charles, do you have any tips for those to help cope with the disease?
First is you need to get a lot of support from your family. You know, the family support is it brings out a lot, no? A lot of problems with those with kidney disease is depression and sadness. Imagine if you're doing dialysis 3 times a week. That's 3 times, that's more than an hour that you're always in the hospital. This can really bring you down. So you need to have good support and friends to help you, bring you up. Also, if you have relatives or you have diabetes or hypertension, find people who can help you become healthier. Find people who will support you and help you stay healthy, and you will be more motivated to do so.
Now remember, the best way to avoid getting sick is to focus on prevention and living a healthy as well as an active lifestyle. Avoid foods so high in sodium and cut out any excess sugar in your diets. Thank you very much, nephrologist Dr. Amiel de la Cruz and family medicine specialist Dr. Charles Edward Florendo for being with us today. We appreciate your time and your insights. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we'll see you again next time.